Hello, this is the RPG Pundit, the final boss in Internet Shitlords. Here I am with, you can see there's Big Chungus and Meatball. And I've taken advantage of the fact that I've just filled their bowl to, to do this filming. Because today I'm talking about a couple of my products that I don't have books to show you of because they're only available in PDF. There are a couple of RPGPundit Presents issues, just like I've done in some of the previous videos, letting you know what's inside them. But I'm also going to talk today about the reason why, one of the reasons why I've never done a Kickstarter. And one of the reasons why some people can do a Kickstarter with total security, and some people can't. So anyways, the first thing I wanted to do is cover a bit more of information about the RPGPundit Presents series. And today I'm going to talk about RPGPundit Presents number 11 and number 13. RPGPundit Presents number 12 is called Two More Magical Grimoires, and it has two grimoires, one that has to do with the summoning of elemental spirits, and another one that has to do with creating a kind of extraplanar space that are based on real medieval grimoires, but those two are now included in the Old School Companion, in RPGPundit Presents the Old School Companion, which is one of my collection books. That is the Medieval Authentic Companion Guide. So, so if you want, you get all the grimoires, at least almost all the grimoires are in there, and those two are in there. So if you're looking for grimoire goodness, you might want to just pick up the Old School Companion. So Chungus has finished eating, as you can see. Meatball is still pecking at her food. She's a more delicate eater, a more sophisticated cat. So, RPGPundit Presents number 11 is called Crazy Wizards, and it's a collection of a half-dozen wizards. Now, what it doesn't have is the stats of those wizards as NPCs, because these are not just meant to be NPC characters. Instead, all 6 of them are based with a lot of kind of gonzo liberties taken on historical and mythological characters. Okay, some of them will be immediately recognizable to people who are very learned in world mythology, people like Fuji or Shivarud, right? But then others are, a little bit more carefully hidden, and some of them are based on a few historical magicians or people that claim to be magicians, or people that were accused of being witches or things like that, right? Like the Mistress of Spiders. So each one of them is given a detail of who they are, why they're crazy, and, what their agendas are. Whoa! She just jumped right past me and up she went. Okay. So you're getting a look at an empty spot here where my cats used to be. All right, just a second here. Let's go over and see where Big Chungus has ended up. Well, there she is. Hey, Chungus. Hello, Chungus. How are you? The big comfy chair. There we go. So now we do some more filming of Chungus. Okay. So in Crazy Words, it's a small source book. It's, I think, 11 pages, 10 pages long. So you basically are getting a page per dude. And it tells you their whole story, explains their background, what their agendas are, why they're crazy, what they're doing. And then each one has either a spell or an item or some other kind of mechanical detail that is associated with them that you can then incorporate. So these guys could be like NPCs that you run into in a game, but they could also be like legendary wizards of the past, and what the characters are actually after are their magic items or their specialty spells, some of which are quite good. And of course, it's mechanically open for, pretty much any OSR type game. So that's RPGPundit Presents 11. And RPGPundit Presents 13 is Making the Most of Your Dragon Corpse. And it's also a very short one. I think it's only about 8 pages long, right? So these are inexpensive books. I think both of them, if I'm not mistaken, I could be wrong, but I think both of them are like $1.99, right? So you can get both of them for under $5, right? Making the Most of Dragon Corpse is stuff about, I've always liked adventurers who get experimental with looting in more creative ways than just getting, some coins and some items, right? So, Dungeon Chef, RPGPundit Presents #1, is all about what happens when you eat certain monsters. And the answer in a lot of cases is they're poisonous, but in some cases there's going to be weird and crazy stuff you can do with them, right? And making the most of your dragon corpse assumes, well, if a dragon is a really badass monster, then besides his horde, there should be lots of stuff you should be able to do with him, right? And this also ties in quite a bit to like the medieval authentic element of like legends and folktales, in that, creatures, supernatural creatures, were meant to have different uses that were important for everything from, magical charms to medicines, right? And so in this book, I explain how you can make use of different body parts and byproducts of dead dragons for all kinds of different purposes, right? So everything from making armor out of their scales, making weapons out of their claws, to, and all with mechanical details of how to do them, right? And what their characteristics are, making use of their breath or poison sacs, making use of their, of some of their more unusual substances within them, let's put it that way. And so it's like really creative stuff. It's stuff that could actually technically work both as a medieval authentic thing, because like it's weird, but it's the kind of weird that you really see in medieval stories, right? Like, the dragon pearl is something that comes right out of the stories of, in medieval stories, great lizards were supposed to have pearls inside them that had were not only very valuable, but had special properties, right? So that's one example. But also, it can really work with a Gonzo game too, right? Because it's like, wait, you want us to harvest what from a dragon? That kind of thing. So again, both of those are just short products. I just wanted to keep telling you guys about each of the Pundit Presents issues so that you know what's in them. And if you're looking to pick something up, if you want to support me, but also if you're looking for interesting stuff to get for your OSR, D&D, or fantasy RPG games, you should check out my RPGPundit Presents series. And of course, if you do want to support me, I'm very grateful for that. Supporting me can mean subscribing to this channel, liking this video, sharing this video. But it can also mean, you can toss money at me just, as a gift. I've got a PayPal link and I've got a Patreon link below. And I really appreciate everyone who supports me on Patreon. But if you want to support me and get something back, because I don't really actively use, like I know some people use Patreon and have special things for Patreon subscribers. I don't. So if you're going on a Patreon, it's just because you like me and you want to send me money every month. You don't want to forget. And I really appreciate it. I'm very, very grateful. But if you want something in return, the way to do that is check out these RPGPundit Presents issues. Find the one that seems interesting to you, that you think you might like or that you will like. Watch these videos, find out more details about what they're about, and then pick one up. And it's like you're buying me a coffee, Nowadays, for $1.99, it's like you're buying me half a coffee, really, given the price of things. But you're also getting something in return. And I really appreciate it, but I also hope that you're going to find it useful, right? Because it's important that it be cool for you, right? Chungus agrees. Don't you agree, Chungus? Hello? Hello? She's not sure what to make of this. I don't usually film her sitting here. Anyway, so finally, some people have asked me, why don't you have a Kickstarter? I've never done a Kickstarter, right? And there's a lot of reasons not to do a Kickstarter. But it's also tied into something that I just realized about, in this last year or two, there have been a lot of Kickstarters that have been very, very successful for progressive SJW writers. I mean, we had one that just finished now, that is a game that I mentioned in the previous video, that ended up getting I think $1 million. Just amazing, right? Now, does this mean that there's gamers that are going to be super excited about playing this progressive game that they've invented? No. And I was thinking about this dualism, right? Because there are some games that have raised enormous amounts of money on Kickstarter and have had no impact outside of that. So what's going on, right? And in fact, one of the obvious reasons for this is that a lot of them just never ended up producing, right? The products are they're due to come out someday and nobody knows when, and they probably never will. And welcome to, life with GMS, you know, Garrett Skarka, who had done the far, all the way back to Far West, you know, that guy, I'll mention it every time I get a chance. He once did some post claiming, oh, well, you know, the RPG Pundit is not a guy that produces useful role-playing games. And I'd be like, dude, in the 7, now 8, I think, 9, I don't know if it's more than 9, do I hear 10 years since your Kickstarter got hundreds of thousands of dollars and then you did nothing, you produced nothing, no product has come out for it and never will. In that time, when you have failed to do Far West, I've made 100 products, 100 RPG products, many of whom are bestsellers. So there you go. And you know, that's one of the things for me is that I like to produce something and then trust that people will buy it, because that takes a lot of pressure off of me. And I realize now that these guys that make these huge sums, these progressive, because they're always like these progressive products that are like hip and usually tied into the subject of the, you know, of the month or of the year. So lately, critical race theory, right? So you had Swords Fall's thing that he never produced, you know, like his setting, his T-Core setting or whatever. He never actually got the book out. And at first it was supposed to be a role-playing game, and then it really wasn't. Then it was supposed to be like, you know, it was supposed to be a setting game, and then it wasn't really that. It was more just like an art game, like an art product, you know. But none of it, yeah, it didn't complete, right? And now we've got this this setting, Coyote and Crow, that is, you know, about how an alternate future setting, or an alternate present setting, I guess it would be, where 700 years ago a meteor killed all the white people, or something happened. There's a meteor strike on Earth, and then suddenly no white people ever showed up again, and the Native Americans created a super advanced super society of green energy, you know, where they have incredible super tech and 3D printers, but they never harmed the Earth, you know, and and you know, that's what their selling point is, but that's not really what they're selling, right? And this is the thing. These guys can get away with it because what if you've got is a double false economy. And what I mean is this, right? On paper, the Kickstarter people are making, you know, the persons making the woke game are promising you a woke product that is going to come out. You know, a game, a book that will have certain defined qualities to it, right? And the purchaser is, I mean, technically we know that with Kickstarter, it's met, you know, they've set it up so that you get no guarantees. But the idea behind it is the person who's putting in whatever amount of money it is, whether it's $100 or whatever, is going to get that book or those products, right? And that's the apparent economy. And sometimes there's some kind of an ulterior motive on the part of one or the other, right? For example, if you have some guy that was basically doing a fraud, he could promise to do a product. The customer is expecting that product, but he never provides it. He spends all the Kickstarter money on whatever, and the customer gets ripped off, right? So that's a single, on one-sided false economy, right? The guy never had an intention of making the product, right? But what we have here is a two-sided false economy. Now, I'm not saying that Coyote and Crow is never going to come out. Hell, even Swordsfall's product might come out, though it looks very doubtful right now, right? Far West, we can be pretty sure is never going to come out, but you never know, maybe by some miracle. But the point is that that at least in the latter couple of cases, what people want is not actually the product, and what the guy is selling is not actually the product. The product is an irrelevant piece of it's a MacGuffin, you could say, right? It's like it's a convenient catalyst for what's really being bought and sold, right? Which is that the game producer that is making a woke game about, you know, enlightened super societies where there are no white people, or whatever other variant, you know, brave feminist superheroines, or, you know, whatever the SJW cause of the month is, right? What they're selling is the opportunity for the purchaser to get a sense of absolution at giving huge amounts of money to someone who is talking about the thing that they know to be virtuous, right? So they have declared, you know, obviously First Nations, virtuous people, anti-colonialism. That's what they're selling. They're selling that idea of the virtue of anti-colonialism and promoting First Nations and what have you, Native Americans,
whatever the term you want to use. The game is secondary. The thing that's being sold is that the people who send money to that Kickstarter will have the feeling that they are being absolved of their colonialism, absolved of their crimes for being part of Western civilization, and will then get to show off and claim, but not the book. The book's irrelevant. They'll get to just go on Twitter and say, I supported Coyote and Crow, right? I did this. I've been absolved. Look, I am reborn, So this is like the selling of indulgences, right? In the medieval church, right? It's not the purpose of what's going on here is a spiritual ritual of the new religion, which is this religion of wokeism, right? And that's why these people will throw $1 million to someone, and that person has already given them what they need, right? So if they never end up producing anything, it doesn't matter. Now, if somebody else doesn't end up producing anything, when J-Mal failed to produce his mega dungeon on Kickstarter, it was a damn disaster. And why? Because OSR players actually want a product that they're going to play, right? The people who are putting money in for these woke themed subjects, that's completely secondary. I'm sure they'll be happy if they get a book, but it doesn't really matter. What really matters is that they have purified themselves by giving money to the holy victims of the oppressors, and have therefore proven themselves now cleansed of their white guilt, right? What have you. So that they can show off their virtue to other people and condemn those who have not yet been saved. That's what they're being given money for, right? They're being given money to have us, what they're giving money for, right? Rather, they're giving money to these people so that they themselves can have a sense of spiritual purity and virtue. And, I've never done a Kickstarter because I would want to be really damn careful, because for me, I would never want to have the shame, the absolute abject humiliation that people like Skarka or James Malzewski should feel, right? They should feel like worms for having taken people's money and not produced something, for having essentially defrauded people, right? They're scum, right? So this is something where, I would never want that humiliation on myself. So if I ever were to do one, I would want to do one that was absolutely foolproof, where basically everything was ready to come out the moment the Kickstarter funded, right? It would need to be that foolproof, right? That there would be absolutely no way short of a, global catastrophe that their book would not end up in your hands, right? And given my nervousness at that idea of the fact that, unlike some of these shameless bastards that I would feel absolutely horrified actually, that if I didn't produce what I promised to make, right? Not the guys that do the woke stuff. They're okay. They don't, because they're not selling products. They're not actually selling the RPG. They're, like I said, they're selling the religious absolution. But the guys that were making actual RPGs, it's just terrible. So I would much rather make games, front load them onto a place to sell, and trust that people are going to buy them, and trust that people are going to like them. And usually people have, because I've gotten nothing but great reviews for all my books. Many of my books are bestsellers, and I've made a really great living. I mean, I haven't made $1 million, that's for sure, but I've made a great living thanks to that, and thanks to you guys. So I thank you guys, and I hope that you'll keep supporting me and picking up my products and checking out everything that I've got to make, and sharing this video wherever you can. And given that I've already done the spiel about, buying my stuff, I guess I'll stop for today. Currently smoking Stanwell Deluxe plus Argento Natural.